Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about cell membranes. Of course, you guys have already learned about the cell theory, and according to the cell theory, cells are the main unit of organization in all living things. So, whether you're a single celled organism or a blue whale, for example, with trillions of cells, you're still made of cells. And all cells are contained by a cell membrane. And the cell membrane keeps pieces inside, and it's what contains the inner parts of the cell. When you think about a membrane, imagine it being like a kind of like a big plastic bag with some tiny holes. That bag is going to hold some things inside, and then it's also going to keep other things outside of it. The holes are there to let some things move in and out of the cell, basically. The cell membrane is not a solid structure. It's made of millions of smaller molecules that create flexible and porous container. And so inside that cell, there's proteins, phospholipids that make up the membrane structure. The phospholipids make up that basic bag that we're kind of using as an analogy. The proteins are found around the holes and help move molecules in and out of the cells, like we mentioned before. But there's also proteins attached to the inner and outer surfaces of the membrane. So scientists use something called the fluid mosaic model to describe how a cell membrane is organized with all of its phospholipids and proteins. The model shows you that a phospholipid molecule, they're shaped with a head and a tail region. So if you kind of picture a balloon with two strings coming off the bottom of the balloon, the head section, or the balloon portion of it, that molecule likes water. It's hydrophilic, but the tails, they do not like water, so they're considered hydrophobic. And so, because the tails want to avoid water, they tend to stick to each other, and then they let the heads face the watery areas, inside and outside of the cell. The two surfaces of the molecule create what we call the lipid bilayer. Okay? So, what about membrane proteins? Well, scientists have shown that many proteins float in the lipid bilayer. Some are permanently attached to the membrane, while others are only attached temporarily. Some are only attached to the inner, or some are only attached to the outer layers of the membrane. And then some of these proteins are transmembrane proteins, and they can pass through the entire structure. The transmembrane proteins that cross this bilayer are very important in the active transport of ions and other small molecules. So as we learn more about cell organelles, you're going to find that they all have a membrane. So organelle membranes do not have the same chemical makeup as the cell membrane. They have different lipids, they have different proteins that make them all unique in their own little way. But the membrane that surrounds a lysosome, for example, is different than the membrane that surrounds the endoplasmic reticulum. Some organelles have two membranes. So for example, a mitochondrion has an outer and an inner membrane. The outer membrane contains the mitochondrion parts, and the inner membrane is going to hold the digestive enzymes that break down food. While we talk about membranes throughout this unit, you need to remember that they all use that same basic phospholipid bilayer structure. But you're going to find lots of different variations throughout the cell. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little more idea on cell membranes. We're going to have some more interactive stuff that you guys will be hopefully give you some more visual on what a membrane looks like. But thanks for listening to this podcast on cell membranes.